Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jody Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Clover Advisors, certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified informational privacy professional, providing practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hi, Justin Daniels here. I am a technology attorney who is passionate about helping companies solve complex cyber and privacy challenges during the life cycle of their business. I am the cyber quarterback, helping clients design and implement cyber plans, as well as help them manage and recover from data breaches.
And this episode is brought to you by... we have symbols. Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, SaaS, e-commerce, and media professional services. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there's greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more, visit redcloveradvisors.com. You ready for some fun today?
I am getting close to our big trip.
It is, but we're not going to talk about that.
Okay.
Nope. Today, we're going to zero in on David Lucatch, who is the CEO, president, and chair of Liquid Avatar. For 35 plus years now, David has cultivated his expertise as an entrepreneur, developing several forward-thinking technologies and taking them to market. Today, his focus is on his latest adventure and mission to empower individuals to better manage, control, and profit from the use of their identity and all related personal data through self-sovereign identity, or known as SSI, solutions. So David, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We're so glad to have you. So we always like to get started with understanding how you got here. So it sounds like you've created all kinds of different technologies. If you can kind of help us understand a little bit of that path and journey, that would be wonderful.
Well, I think we only have a short period of time, so I'll keep it brief. But I started in the internet space in the mid 90s when the internet was just being, born for the general public, and really focused on where consumers needed to be. And frankly, e-commerce didn't even exist at that time. And we approached Visa and MasterCard. I'm from Canada, so we approached them in Canada and said, we'd like to help develop technology to allow Canadians to be able to purchase products online. And it was a bit of a challenge, because for those that know e-commerce might remember that, and most people won't, that Harry Potter was the impetus for e-commerce in the US, where Scholastic allowed users to buy a book online and get it 2 days early. And that really was the tipping point for e-commerce getting started. Canada was a little bit behind. Our banks are a bit different. And one of the solutions MasterCard and Visa wanted to have was to be able to put a card reader inside a 3.5-inch floppy disk. And we said, no, we think we can do better. So we created the packet transfer system that ultimately became the generally used program that everyone in Canada uses to type in their credit card information. And we went from there and moved into incubators, created abilities for companies to start their own internet-based business. And we supported them, the University of Toronto and some of the people there. And then we moved into artificial intelligence and machine learning and natural language processing, and developed a instant translator for chat and other services that was used by gaming companies and everyone to allow people to chat in one language and receive it in another. Today, again, it's very normal, but back then it wasn't. And then I decided about 5 years ago to really pursue another passion, which was the blockchain industry. But I didn't want to look at crypto. We looked at compliance and identity, and that has brought us to where we are today.
One of your favorite topics.
Yes, we will delve into that. I look forward to it.
Indeed, we will. But before we do, I have to admit, I did not appreciate that Harry Potter was the impetus for e-commerce, and our budding Harry Potter fan would really appreciate that.
Indeed.
Go into your blockchain fund. I wouldn't want to hold you back.
No, I think we should start by asking exactly what does Liquid Avatar do, and talk to us a little bit about how taking identity to the next level by leveraging biometrics and blockchain.
Well, and at the beginning of every journey, you've got to look at where both the opportunity and the challenges are. And as we move into Web 3.0, having come from an information-based platform, which the internet was originally, into socialization, we found that there were a number of issues. One was that I could be anyone, and there's an old meme that says on the internet anyone can be a dog, right? So no one knows who we are, how we do things, or where we're from, and that root of trust has not appeared really on the internet. And companies and organizations have been pilfered. They've been swindled. Individuals have been bullied and attacked. There's so many reasons that we have a root of trust in the real world, and I can see you, know who you are, maybe have met with you, and I can trust you. But on the internet, I don't know if you're a dog. So we looked at where the intersection of identity and good practices of the internet should exist, and believing that although we've been around the internet since the mid 90s, that the internet's been broken since then. Because you'd never run a business and say, if somebody steals from us, don't worry, we got you covered. And that's unfortunately what the credit card companies have really had to do, because there's been no way to verify that someone who uses the card is in fact that person. So by looking at the holistic issue and starting with the human challenge, we've put together Liquid Avatar, which allows users to create, manage, control the way that they use identity in the online space, and in fact in the real world, in compliance with the emerging standards that are starting to appear, whether it's GDPR, whether it's CCPA, being European General Data Protection Regulation, or the California Consumer Protection Act, or the Pan-Canadian Trust Framework, or the CRA in Australia. All of those basically say that the consumer needs to be in charge of their data. They need to manage and control it. And that's where Liquid Avatar comes in to help users do that in a way that they own and manage the data, not us.
So can you help walk us through an example? So how would someone use the product? What does that look like?
So let's take an online example and a real world example, because that's probably two ways to look at it. Because everybody thinks of SSI, or self-sovereign identity, or decentralized identity, DCI, as an online opportunity. But there are many opportunities to use digital identity in the real world, in the conventional world, the physical world. Now, I'm sure both of you drive, but I don't think either one of you got a driver's license so that you could buy liquor at a liquor store, right? And so the most common form of identity that's used to purchase alcohol or cannabis, where it's legal, or other restricted products, is a driver's license. And none of us get a driver's license to be able to prove who we are. So, and with the emerging rules, regulations, and laws, the information on the driver's license is really too much information to give to someone who needs to make a decision if you're of age to purchase that. Now, I don't think we'd want our children exposing unnecessarily data in the online world. Why do we expose it in the real world? Why does a clerk need to know where I live to allow me to buy a bottle of alcohol? It doesn't make sense. So we've designed and have proof of concept, and we're just moving into market now with a system that allows the clerk to present a user with a QR code. And it's not a transactional QR code. It's a QR code that allows a blockchain engagement to start. So the QR code changes all the time. So a clerk presents a QR code to the consumer who wants to buy a bottle of liquor. The consumer uses our app to read that QR code. The QR code then asks for our consumer to present information to the clerk system, the store system. And usually it's an age verification. I don't need to present my address, and the clerk can ask electronically for what I need, or what they need, sorry, and we present back that information. We validate it by using our biometrics to prove that we are who we are, and the clerk receives a green check mark or a red X saying I've met that age requirement to purchase that product. So at no time, it's called a predicate proof. At no time did I transfer data to that clerk telling them things that I didn't want them to know. I just gave them an indication based on information that was previously verified in a verifiable credential inside the app that I could prove who my age, not who I was, but my age to that clerk standing in front of them without revealing any information. The same can be held true online. So challenges are starting to appear, mainly in Europe. There was an article this morning about Germany, but Europe is really adopting a situation where if you want to consume content that is of an age-restricted level, or you want to buy products that are age-restricted, you need to prove who you are online by age. And you might have to prove that you are a real person as well. And by using biometrics to assure that someone can get access to that app, and then providing assurance through the transfer of verifiable credentials, we can prove that someone is of age.
So thank you, David. Can you talk a little bit about how the blockchain plays a role? I assume it must be around the data that's being collected that goes into the QR code and is decentralized.
Well, really where it does is and I'm going to make, I know I give a long-winded answer, but I'm going to really now compact this. If you walk in to use I'm going to use in the US a debit card because it's the better example, and purchase something, you're asked, the merchant says, I want to verify that you can pay for that product. So there is a verifier. As the holder of the financial instrument, you present that to the verifier and usually their payment system. It goes through the processor, that payment terminal, and connects with the issuer, being the financial institution that issued your card, your debit card. And that information whirs around, checks balances, does all that stuff. And then it says, we need to know if this is who holds the card. Can you put in a PIN? And that's the challenger. And so that process happens in a matter of seconds by going through an electronic network that verifies real information in real time. What the blockchain does is allows that issuer to verify that you own that credential. And it puts the verification, that verifiable credential on the blockchain, not the information behind it, but the information that you are the owner. So that we can check the blockchain whether that credential exists from the issuer, that you are who you say you are, and that you are entitled to use that credential through private and public keys.
So that sounds like it's a different use case for probably non-fungible tokens that are designed to do exactly that.
I have trouble saying that non-fungible tokens can do that because non-fungible tokens are transferable. Verifiable credentials are not transferable and can't go into more than one wallet. Now, you can use a non-fungible token as an access point, but that does not prove that you meet the requirements that may be required outside of that. So an NFT or not, it will provide you access, but it won't prove that you have the underlying credentials to use it.
Okay, that makes sense.
So what do you think, in terms of the future, how digital identity is going to evolve?
Wow, I think that's pretty simple. Many of us are used to using now a digital wallet on our phone, and that's called an edge-based wallet. And it's really, in fairness, it's a controlled wallet by the provider of the phone. So that really isn't a self-sovereign wallet because I'm not in control of that. And people and the organizations may know what I have in that wallet. But I think what's happening is we're, right now we carry a very thick wallet with a limited number of credentials in it. And if we have a lot of credentials, we sort of rotate those out. I know that when I go to the US, I take out some of my Canadian credit cards and put in US credit cards. I mean, we change things over. Digital credentials, digital verifiable credentials, I can have a stack of them 1,000 high and still fit it into a cloud-based wallet, which we provide. And so I think the future of digital identity is the ability to prove who I am, where I am, and not only who I am, but where I go and the things that I do are connected to me. And I'm in control of that data, no one else. So if I choose to share information, that is at my discretion, not at a corporation's discretion.
So earlier you had talked about, we don't know if it's a human or a dog on the internet. And in the metaverse, I fear the same situation, that everyone can hide behind whatever cool picture or identity I feel like having then. Share a little bit about how you envision Liquid Avatar incorporating digital identity in this metaverse.
We're already starting that process now. So let's start with that. There's 3 different types of identity. The first one is no identity, which is what we're used to. Everybody just goes on, I'm a human being, I'm a dog, I'm a cat, doesn't really matter. Someone is on the internet. And ergo could be on the in the metaverse or other mixed reality platforms. Could be in a virtual school, could be anywhere. The second one is the ability to prove that I am a real person. Now, we can do that with biometrics and we can do that with device verification. So that's a very simple way of doing that, because that creates one user and one account. Because your biometrics, and we talk about biometrics, we're talking initially about facial mapping. We're not talking about just a picture, we're talking about facial mapping. We're not talking about fingerprints initially, because if I asked you to prove who you are in the real world, you take out a piece of identity and almost, I don't think you'd have anything with a fingerprint on it, but you certainly have something with a picture on it. That can be used electronically to create roots of trust. So first is no identity. Second is a very simple identity that proves that you are a human being. The third one is one that we're used to if we open bank accounts or financial accounts or work with the government, which is what we call KYC, or know your customer, know your client. And that is using a passport or driver's license or national ID card, and we can verify those in 180 countries and prove that they belong to you, because we map your facial recognition against the security features and mapping on that piece of identity. Now, I will tell you that there are countries, and there are north of the border where I am in Canada, there are provinces that are moving to digital identity because it's faster, cheaper, better. Right? You don't have to issue plastic cards every year or every 5 years. And if they're verifiable credentials and they're stored in the cloud, if your device is lost, stolen, or compromised, they're easily recovered. But in the metaverse, we're starting out with the ability for someone to do some guest services. So you're not frightening anyone to come in and see what the opportunities are, but you can't do anything. And then we can do what we call level 2, which is a device and a biometric verification. So we know that the person to the left of us and the right of us is a real person. And the third way of doing that, especially when it comes to areas of vulnerability with children or other things, or gaming where there's restrictions, we can do KYC. And so we can put data guardianship in so that an underage student would not, or child would not be doing their own identity, would be supported by a parent. So we worked all of that out, and we're already ready for that today.
Interesting. I as a generation that has my physical thing, the idea of losing that and it's on a phone, I hate to sound like that person of I don't want to change, but there's a part of me that feels a little squeamish with that idea.
I agreed. That's why it's sort of a crawl, walk, run scenario, right? Everybody isn't going to turn over tomorrow, and it's going to take time. But if I go back, 25 years, nobody wanted to use email at the beginning. If think of really smart people out there thought the internet was a bust, it was going to be just a fad. So we are slowly moving in direction. I'm sure most people who have children out there know that if they want to reach their kids, they're going to text them. They're not going to call them. And so when did calling disappear? If you ask a child what a payphone is, you're not going to get a great answer, or a record player, although they are sort of coming back. So things do change, and people are naturally resistant to change. Digital identity allows me further control over my data and information. And I think we will see a tipping point in the next 3 years where it'll just accelerate, because we're already seeing that in Europe. So it's not going to take long for North America to adopt.
So speaking of time, that's the perfect segue to our next question, which is, what are the barriers to mass adoption of this kind of identity? You seem to have keyed on one, which is natural resistance, but I have a feeling those pesky regulators and laws might be one of the other issues.
Well, and that, coming from a lawyer, that's a really good question. But again, and I'm not going to talk from a global perspective, but it when we looked at, and we did a good job of being able to connect COVID credentials to a specific user to make sure no one was creating a false credential. But we knew that was we perceived that was going to be very short lived. In investigating that, we found out that in the United States, there are immunization information systems, and there's well over 60 of them, because some of the large cities have their own. None of them are integrated or connected. So that's a challenge when it comes to information. When we take other countries, and again, I'm not promoting one over the other, in Canada, our health information system is connected through a card. So we have an integrated system already. When we look at what provinces are already doing, they're adopting open standards that are being set by industry. So governments are already starting to publish governing regulate and sort of a regulatory framework for how identity would work, and how HICS or HIPAA or PHIPAA, all this will work. It's all being decided initially by governments. And even in a decentralized environment, nobody wants regulatory interference until something goes wrong. And then they really want regulators to be there. So I think what's happened is the governments are softly setting all these frameworks in which organizations like ourselves and several other leading organizations that were recently identified by Gartner are using those to develop our services and platforms. So I think we're embracing partnership with governments and organizations rather than saying that they're separate and apart.
I'd love to piggyback on the privacy regulations a little bit. What are you seeing from the different privacy laws, and how these new identities work with the laws, or how are you seeing kind of at any intersection, right? When we talk about biometric data, that's a really sensitive data point. All the privacy laws keep talking about biometric data. So I was just wondering if you can share a little bit about how it helps, or how you're working through some of those requirements to make sure people are opting in, they're understanding what they're doing, how you work through that.
So it is a changing landscape that is going to be fraught with deep wells and a little bit of quicksand. And I think as industry participants, we see that. So we're trying to move as quickly as possible. We've started with a gold standard, which is GDPR, which is out of Europe. That's what everyone seems to build against. California Consumer Protection Act was sort of built on the framework of GDPR and has gone beyond that. And I think that's why we're seeing it's remarkable. And I think as a privacy expert, you'll agree, we're seeing some of the big telecoms and device manufacturer and California-based corporations talk vehemently how they're there to protect your privacy. And yet over the years, they have, to some of them, have been the biggest culprits in breaching privacy rules. So I think what we're doing as a company is we're working to stay on top of it. We do have privacy consultants that we work with, and what we're doing is notice I said facial mapping rather than pictures, because facial mapping is different data for biometrics as is pictures. Our opt-in policies are are very explicit. We have them updated regularly, and we know that the landscape is going to continue to change. We subscribe to the right to be removed and the right to be forgotten, which are specific rights and different. The revocation of credentials. So there are a lot of things that are being updated and changing, and we're working diligently to stay within the framework of the different changing regulatory landscapes.
It is changing all the time. Lots of change.
Especially when most companies' entire business depends upon data collection and monetization.
Well,
That
every
is-
company is
that
collecting
is-
data somehow.
Indeed. So
And we're seeing that change. I mean, I think a company, and I'm not looking to point fingers, but Google has been struggling with that as they look to remove cookies and come up with new ways to manage data. And topics is one of the recent things that I think they've explored, but it is difficult. And we've seen companies already start to become defunct because of the changing landscape.
Yep.
indeed. Well, David, as we ask all of our guests, do you have a best privacy or security tip you would like to share from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, don't rely on two-factor authentication. So recently, a friend of mine had a custodial account at a major, I won't say whom, but at a major crypto house that is well known. And between a SIM port hack and an authentication hack, they lost a substantive amount of money. So I think the key is you if you want to keep your data safe, you have to work to keep your data safe. And that doesn't mean that we all won't become victims of issues. I mean, I was a victim of a SIM port hack, and I got recovered within 20 minutes because none of my passwords were inside a Google account. So don't keep passwords inside your Google account. Yeah, but you have to work and be diligent at maintaining your privacy and your data, because those are some of your most precious assets.
So when you are not building companies and forward thinking for digital identity, what do you like to do for fun?
Well, if you can see my background, I am a comic book collector and have been for well over 50 years. So my outside passion is pop culture, and outside of my family, because I spend the limited amount of time I can with my family and my dog. But it is really in the pop culture realm. I'm an avid comic book collector, and I was fortunate enough this past year to work with a group that I became a comic book writer and publisher. And I will say, at our metaverse, Aftermath Islands, our storyteller is the co-creator of Deadpool. So we're really connected to the comic book industry.
Very exciting. Now, if people would like to learn more or connect with you, where is the best place for them to go?
They go to liquidavatartechnologies.com, and I'm the only David Lucatch on LinkedIn, so they can reach me there. That's probably the best way to reach me. And I look forward to having discussions with anyone that's interested in this topic area.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. It's really fascinating and interesting. We'll see what the future, the metaverse and beyond hold. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me today.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.